So we're going to work on pathways of circulation in the ribs to begin. So I want you to have your bolster horizontal across your mat. You got a block right in front. And so you might just kind of side up to that block and sit on top of it. It is a little bit small under the sit space, so just the seated space. But when you begin that process of reclining, it's a process in the stomach muscles that as you lower back, we're going to kind of vary how the inversion process happens in the ribs. So as you glide your back and your head to the two blankets, even if you can go to a lower blanket height, I want you to have plenty of support. Like it feels as if this is a whole support from your seat through the ribs, and then almost, I know there's a broken space here where your arms can open out, but get a feel with your legs starting to stretch down, and then add a sandbag across the top of the thighs. If the hips are persuaded into that length in the hip flexors and the knees kind of plop down, you might spend a moment to get your feet spaced out so that the leg muscles can kind of firm up. So instead of getting some fear around the hyperextension, focus on kind of firming into your legs and feeling that the heels kind of hook to the ground space. And then as you move your ribs in their expanded mode, we'll reach back, and you can either hold onto your belt so that you kind of slide your hands out. So there's this almost kind of perfect space for the arms to settle between the bolster and the blankets. And it feels kind of like that cactus shape with the arms, but I have a little hold onto my belt. So I'm gripping the belt. Now, if the grip feels pressure on your wrist, do a mild hold, maybe with your thumbs, kind of holding onto the belt and giving some circulation to your breathing muscles. So let's begin with this quality of surrender. Kind of feel where the balancing arches through the back muscles, right into the spine itself, right? The spine itself will feel some detail. And if anytime it's uncomfortable to keep a little hold of the belt, just let go and your hands relax anytime. But here, as we coordinate the expansion and elongation of the core chamber, the thoracic vertebrae, the ribs, you just simply feel how that spread of breath on the inhale filters through the nose, and the abdomen expands. And then on your exhalation, relax, empty. So you kind of fill your vessel on the inhale. And your exhale, letting go. Take a few more moments with this emphasis of awareness through structurally lengthening, right, through the legs, through the front, expansion in the front spaces. So there's a real clarity of the pathways of circulation from external, which is kind of what we might start with in our experience, is putting the body into what we see visually as the pose, and moving to the internal. Okay, so for today, I want to get a little bit of work with the diaphragm strengthening in the beginning. So one way we work on strengthening our breathing muscles is inversions and twists. So we have this chest expansion here, okay? So just release the grip and move a hand down to take the sand off, and take a cobbler's pose. So you can keep your block where it's at, Open the arms, slide the feet in. And then as the knees start to point out, this is kind of a funny and kind of a quirky pose sometimes. It's so used in all restorative layers that it's just a repeated pattern with the hip joint. So feel when your feet come to touching, like maybe the soles touch, maybe a little parts of the feet are connecting, not necessarily trying to seal it, but you'll feel in this version that there's nothing under the knees, but the sacrum is really quite supported and incredibly lifted. And it's not kind of tucking or flexing. It's more of this kind of neutral position with the sacrum. Right, and it's a place where we want stability, not a lot of mobility. So that's what we're going to anchor into. So I have my arms relaxed open and experiencing my breath. That's clearly what we do in restorative settings. You know, if that movement of the knees kind of seized up the movement of the abdomen, it's no longer able to kind of poof up. The belly poof is now kind of a slight tug at the abdominal kind of stream. Then we're going to keep that sense of the feet together, not necessarily forcing or pushing, but see if you can let the leg gravitationally kind of release towards the ground. Give it about half a minute here to continue that positioning. If it's feeling too much on one hip or the other, you notice differences, then you'll want to slide your feet a little farther downwards away from the block. See if you'll sense a different motion into the joint. And then move the knees to point up. So that means you take yourself out of Cobbler's pose, you slide the feet apart, and then we're going to keep that light tilt in the pelvis. So for some of us, if we're trying to move our back into like cat-cow, it's sort of stuck because of the block. So I want you to keep that block there and then get in your belt and move it so that it's on your core area. And then feeling that your neck is highly supported. So we still want this amount of height under our head. It's really important here. So as you bend your right knee's already bending, but as you draw that right leg in, you can feel how there might be some reservation. And I don't know how you're feeling with it. We all have individual patterns with these muscular engagements, right? But when you push down to your left foot, be sure that the knee is anchoring forward, right? It's not tipping open or swerving any either direction. You're going to use your belt and see if you can kind of snag the bottom of your foot with your belt and then elevate that right leg up. So now the abdominal organs are, putting a little bit of work on the diaphragm because it puts that weight into the diaphragm. It has to resist to operate. So as you hold on, we'll keep it very simple, not too stylish. You have your belt around all the foot is good. And reach your hands up so the arms are holding. You're getting a light sense of movement in your shoulder, but your arms are kind of straight. They're not bending and pulling. They're pulling, but they're not bending. And as they're lifted and inverted, feel that circulation through the back, the seams of the calf. The left leg could stay bending. If it starts to swerve to the left, opening the knee, then you're going to probably need to monitor that left leg a bit. You could stretch the left thigh down, right? I find that a little much on my back, just even if it's slightly pulling. I like to keep it real basic for my musculature, so I'll stay with the elementary version, left knee bending. Okay, and let that be simple. I don't know if you feel enough stretch here. If it's too minimal for you, you can always work on moving the leg closer to you. But it's nice to let it be kind of simple and inverted, just straight up. So if that right foot is flexing, I seem to sense enough circulation in my calf just here and now, not needing more. And scan sensation on the back of that right leg. Okay, with the mind, maybe closing your eyes. Okay, now slide the hands down. So you give your hands a little bit of a rest. Okay, now as you shift the leg that's up in the belt, you might take a moment where both feet are up, and it's kind of, I'm barely holding onto my belt, although my feet are both into the belt. And there might be some direct intensity in your musculature. When we do legs up the wall, this is close to the pattern. This is often taught where you have space between your bolster and the wall, and there's a block. So this is why I'm kind of including this today, so you get a sense of this before we go to the wall later. And then change. So the right foot comes down, left foot is up, and balance the base of that right foot so you can feel the shape of the sole of the foot on the ground. You could get lost in any little thing, any place of the body in a pose. But as we reach the arms to straighten, and it doesn't straighten the back, right? The back isn't necessarily straight. It has its three curves right now. And for some of us, our head might push quite a bit in the blankets and cause the chin to kind of jolt up. So this might be a good experience for you to feel the neck length, feel the connection from the neck into the skull, right? Make sure that it's nestled and long so the chin doesn't feel like it pulls up as much as the neck lengthens. And you might let that right leg stretch down. You might try it. Could be different on the second side, but likely intelligent to have the same option with the opposite leg. And feel that sweep of circulation throughout this left leg. Right. If the arms are in massive, the wrists are in massive fatigue, there are some different options. This might be sometimes good for those of us that the pressure on the wrist is the issue, but the hold is not as much. So it's either one or the other or both. But if it does become too much, right, you can always work with the belt buckled up, and it could be around your rib cage, so you're not holding it at all. So that's another option. Okay, we can't really put just one sandbag on the one foot. That would be, although you could kind of hook the sandbag handle on your foot, I suppose. Well, maybe something in the next year will do. Okay, so with that extension, like if the leg is standing upside down, maneuver the belt into any interesting spots on the bottom of that foot that you can feel the relationship and how you kind of hold yourself in gravity. Generally, when you're upside down, the postural patterns are pretty much right on. And all the body parts are below the leg. Okay, so now as that right leg just bend, soften, you might slide your hands down just a little bit to feel how you'll get out of it, kind of like you got in with that first leg. So you'll bend through that left leg, point the knee a little bit out, and then slide the belt off your left foot. Now, as you lower down, I want you to push into your feet and shift the block away, place it overhead, and then roll think about this rib cage. Even if you were to hold on to this, kind of seize this zone, it certainly has a box. It's kind of box-like, right? It's like but it's more of a barrel, right? If you were to like touch deeper into the ribs, it's kind of a barrel shape versus box. So I want you to try to let your barrel roll to the left barrels, and then come into these moments. We're going to spend a little time in side sage with the left hip down. So the side will matter today if you're left or right side for where we're advancing. So I want you to let the left elbow be between the bolster and the blankets. You can certainly have this blanket height higher if it feels better for you to have a little bit more lift, not only for your neck, but also for the circulation right into your shoulders. Sometimes a little more height can be an advantage. So I have a little bit of support on the inside of my right leg. It could be in the version of a ball or a block. And then I have a sandbag. Okay. So you might have one. And if you place that sand to the side, it could be across. This sometimes appears like it's not the most exciting version with the sandbag, but it's certainly dependable, it won't fall off as easily. And if you've got it on your actual side, it is a side stretching pose, then you want to let that density be impressionable on your ribs, right? As many of them as you can relate to with the sand. Okay, so if the arm is a little bit tired, it can rest on the sand. You can also bring your arm to open a little bit of the gateway into the chest, the pectorals. Or some of us might bring the arm over the side of our head towards the block or behind your blankets. Left arm is relaxed. Letting that left arm completely release. And the block, likely you want to have it pretty high up. It seems at first like you want it low, but if you do try that out, sometimes it works nicely to have that little lift with the hand and then kind of let the arm drain out. The arm, the ribs, and the shoulder picks up some heat. Okay, so let's feel how the inhalation fills up through the rib cage. And how the exhalation centers the mind. And the inhale will likely follow that exhalation no matter what. And it doesn't have to be an exuberant exchange from the out breath to the in breath. Just see how it shifts along. Maybe you're able to let your head relax more so the head doesn't kind of hold up. The neck muscles, because I think that sometimes in this shape, I might notice myself when it's time to come out that I was holding my neck the whole time. So that's why the blanket height sometimes helps. A little bit more, because your head weight will relax and kind of push the blankets down. So feel the back supported by this pose. The left knee bending towards the bolster creates that side support. So if my knee is bending, left knee completely bending, right? It's pulled up to the bolster. That stretches the left side of my back. Okay, so I'm mentioning that because we're going to be soon enough, you can keep relaxing your neck, but soon enough, we're going to work on continuing that awareness through that left side of the spine. That's the relaxed side. Now, if your right arm is getting a little bit intense pull, right, you can feel the pressure build in the shoulder. Feel what it's like to kind of span the arm, maybe either a little bit open, and a little bit goes a long way, not overdoing it or exaggerating the expansion, but just feeling small kind of tendrils of pull through the chest. You're kind of getting to know yourself. right? Whether you want to or not, it's one existence you'll probably get to know a bit. So when you get a feel of the arm opening on the right side, so we've got this right side having some blood flow, right? There's a little bit more circulation and kind of hydration for these right side tissues. Okay, so we're going to exchange that across, going to work with this cross-lateral restoring pattern. So I'm going to lower the right hand and also take the sand aside. Okay, so kind of stay with this pattern. If you need to kind of shift along and do something on your own, of course, do that. But you'll glide your right leg over to the left and you'll try to roll not just your ribs, but kind of your head space towards the left arm. Push with your left hand to lift up the ribs. And then as you maneuver, maybe you've got props kind of snagged on you, your emphasis is going to be to simply sit up on the bolster. Okay. Bring that right leg so it's kind of crossed under the left leg. And then I turn so I'm kind of facing forward when I'm sitting on my bolster. I think if I face to the side, it would not be a good place of my spine. So then I take a simple cross-legged. So actually this is more than cross-legged. The right leg is at the base. I'm going to put a sandbag on top, that inner right thigh, and then cross the left leg over. Okay, now if this doesn't cooperate, you know, if it doesn't feel like a place of cooperation in the joints or the nerves, what you could do is as an adaptation of it, just another alternative would be the left foot, is on the block, left knee points open. Why would that be different? For some of us, this might be a little too much pull in the hip. Okay, and this might be an invited motion for the hip joints as well. So choose the position, block or foot on the floor, foot on floor, foot on block. And then I've got my sand to anchor. And if you feel like you're kind of dropping back in the spine space, be sure that you're secure on your bolster. And then hands to the rib cage. So it could be kind of low ribs near the more fleshy space of the waist. But see if you can feel kind of that container that holds the ribs, or the ribs hold it, right? It's kind of that rib space. And then let your body turn side to side, not kind of moving the shoulders down, but actually twisting. So you're holding on to that twist. And then we're going to move a little more to the left side and then reach the right arm to the outside of that left leg, right? So above the knee, left hand back onto the blanket and twist. Now, if you've got your foot on the block, it won't be that different. You'll simply hold on with the hand versus the elbow, okay, with that connection. So feel where the arm connects to the left leg. And then as you take that rotation, directing the rib circulation to the back, kind of feel where that existence or how you coexist with your spine. And you have to be a little careful of the hand on that left arm. So if the hand touches down, it feels like you're pushing into the bones, up into the wrist. You might flatten that height down so it's more like your finger pads touch down. Some of us might like the palm down, some might like the hand kind of spider the fingers a little bit. And then as you feel that turn, this is a strengthening pose. So the idea is to let the abdominals relax when you twist, not to pull them and tighten them in, but to strengthen the diaphragm. We let the abdominal muscles relax when we turn, and it helps them operate naturally. They want to operate with a neutral core for this shape. Okay, now when you come forward, unwind, you're going to slide that left foot down in front of the right knee. If you're using the block, I want you to take the foot, if you can, to the floor, and then move your sand to the left thigh and feel kind of how that cross-legged pattern is. Try not to fall off your bolster. And then as you get your blocks, what you're going to do is have that sand supporting this hip joint. And I'm going to use a ball under my left thigh. It's kind of minor support, but it feels good. And then you'll take your blocks to the top left, right corner and feel how the waist leans down. Okay, so we're kind of rotating in both of those channels of the ribs. And now as we lean down, this is kind of the counter pose to that side sage we did 2 poses ago. So what we were just working with was the twist into the muscles that we were relaxing in side sage. And now we're lengthening and kind of combing through. So if you kind of lower your head downwards, that might feel supportive for the spine channel all the way up into the brain stem. And if you like to keep that connection a little bit more relaxed in your hands, you could place the blocks a little higher if that feels better for you, and put your elbows on the blocks. Sometimes this is a little easier for the energetic kind of pull through the arms. Okay, so sensation is moving through that left hip. Imagine. Don't imagine, it's probably happening, huh? Okay, feel the leaning perspective in the waist to the down towards the right side. Now the abdomen really relaxes with the breath. Okay, now we're going to keep this side, this left channel in the waist working. So take some care as you bring your hands on the blocks to come back up and kind of face to that front. And we'll take that cobbler's pose again. And this time, of course, sitting upright. So I uncross through the legs, bring the soles of my feet together, and then place my sand on the angle of my feet. Now my feet are kind of turned out, right? They're rotated, the feet are together, just like if I had the palms together, but now it's my other extremities are together. And they touch a little different than your hands do, right? There's a little different coordination in the ankle than there is the wrist. But there is some commonality in the connection, right, towards the pelvic floor, right? For the hands, it would be connection towards heart, but for the feet, it would be pelvic floor. So I want you to get a feel here where your hands interlace. This is really simple, interlace through the roots of the fingers. Let the hands push forward to stretch out through the arms. And then when you get a feeling of lifting your arms up, try to let the weight in your sitting bones relax. So the knees actually relax open a little bit more. They may not come down further, but they certainly can feel that sensation in the inner thighs. Breathe. Okay, now we're going to take these simple this is a more symmetrical twist pattern. And you'll just turn to the right, but you keep the arms semi-lifting. If this is too much on the shoulders, the hands are in front of your heart when you twist. You kind of like this pull a little bit better than up. So feel going both directions, like you're kind of scanning, internal scan, right and then to the left. And take it one more time each side and feel how the feet are connecting. It's challenging to get your feet to push together with this because you have sand. So that you have to kind of keep the hips opening. So go both directions. I suppose I've done more than twice, but go as many times as you feel. And you're trying to anchor the hips so that they're not swerving, right? Your knees aren't tackling movement. I want you to try to keep separated from your hip base to your rib base so it stays open with the knees. So you're kind of dissecting. So upper one more time to the other side, whatever side you're turning to. Okay, and then come back center. Arms are kind of tired from it probably. Bring your hands down, and then as you slide your seat forward, come down off of the bolster and take your side sage with the right hip down. So you've got this left side to open up. Okay, so when you lean down to this right side, have your block overhead, and you might as well put it up high if you're going to use it at all, and the ball on the inside of the left leg. Now, should I push my leg farther back? Is there some extra credit I get internally from that? You might find how you can simply let your leg kind of relax on that ball would be optimal. Optimal. Okay, have a blanket stack. And then as you lean into that right side, you'll add some sand to your left side. Yep. And you'll get a feeling of where your head space moves down on the support. Okay, you're probably not going to be twisting this much to hopefully look at your screen. I don't want you to be torquing your back into a channel that's not suitable for balancing your sides, but feel where that left side travels through the chest walls, which is going to connect to your heart and your lungs, and then overhead with that left arm. Okay. Who knows where that block ended up, right? You might feel a little scattered to find your still point right now, but let the muscles find their way of searching and then settling to change their resting stretch, right? So that's something that you might work with and trying to repeat some of these patterns more than once every week. You know, you might notice some of them where your muscles are at a resting stretch that's very tense, right? So I want you to try to kind of notice those areas that are particularly kind of wired shut and feel the breath moving through them in this shape we're in. A good shape, bad shape, whatever shape you woke up into, huh? And let the spine feel its kind of vitality here. This is a good one for the spine, side stretches. I don't think of them in my mind scanning that it's the spine that gets the work, but it certainly doesn't hurt my back, and it feels like it helps the three curves steady themselves. Okay, so feel where your head is resting, whether you're on your back of your head a little bit or on the side. If it's hard for you to rest your neck when you're on the side of your head, then try feeling when you're a little more on the back side of your head. Okay, right leg is pulled up towards the bolster, but if it's a little cranky, then you might have to change on the second side so it's not as much demand for your hip. Find where you can let the body weight surrender. That could mean you move your left arm open, or it rests on the sandbag. I'll get a few more moments here, fielding circulation through the ribs, spatially lengthen on the in-breath. Exhale, 1 to 2 counts longer than the inhale. Notice where that side that's down is heavy. Kind of feel that weight into that side. And kind of travel the awareness that moves from the foot that's connected to that side as well. Because all we do when we sit and we twist is we keep this leg at the same angle. It's just that we've kind of turned our bodies into that seated frame. So the shapes are all kind of identical. We just did some of them on the side, then we go on our back, and then we sit up. And sometimes we stand upright too. We'll do a little bit of all today. the year in review here. Okay, so when you feel that side weight, it's also the organs too, you know, the colon. I mean, there's so much that could be interacting with you right now in the moment. You'll respond to if needed, but get a feel here for the side. And then I want you to let that left arm come down if your arm was overhead. If you had a block overhead, you might bring that over to the side of you because you'll use it when we come to the seated work. Now, as you slide that sand away, you keep in mind, well, don't keep too much in your mind with it. Try to be in your body. A little more important for today. But as you slide that left foot in and over towards the right foot, the knees kind of connect closer. It's more thighs that connect. And then when we change and we roll in, I want you to, you know, just especially since we're in our own like spaces, I invite you to explore this. When you roll to that right, it's kind of like you're in this fetal position. Then you come up to sitting, and it's a little trying to get looking to the screen. See if you can kind of sit up to that bolster. And then when you take this crossing, we're going to move that sand up to the left thigh. And the right leg, it did go from this turned position, knee this way, right, angled internal to external. So you might find that the sandbag is helpful on the top, kind of on the root of the hip. And then if you need that support of the block, just use it. You know, if you find, oh, you prefer this for your twist, you're going to take the block. If not, you're going to cross the leg. It's not necessarily the most advanced variation of all time, but it certainly does kind of cut the process down into the total structure is balanced at that point as far as connectivities, right? So as the right foot is down, at least you try to get the bottom of the foot down. If the foot sickles and it's kind of open and you can't quite get the inside line of the big toe part down to the inside heel down, you might kind of make your twist a little smaller, kind of shrink it up a little bit. The only issue is your bolster is not movable really next to your foot, it's sort of stuck. So that means these hips have to find their bones connecting and dense. So just sitting like this to me is a little bit of a process to find some serenity here. It takes some connection to my sitting bones. And then when you take that twist, whether your right foot is on the block or it's on the floor besides your leg, good. You're going to turn to your right, reach back, get the right amount of height under your hand, you know, and maybe you move your blanket around this and that way until it is the right support for your arm. Your shoulder is rotating back and in. And then that left arm is on the outside of that right leg, and you can feel that connection. Ooh, it's a challenge to get the abdomen to just relax, right? There's some pulling process that we come into with the breathing and twisting. So it's kind of this new direction that I have to keep reminding myself and reading paragraphs on the diaphragm, that inner twist. To work on strengthening your breathing muscles, you need to relax your abdomen. That's easier said, right? And then feel the abdomen relax. And inhale to lengthen. And then exhale to twist. And you can continue that mentality, inhale to lengthen, even if you don't feel like you got taller, but it's an ideal visualization. And as that left arm for me gets a little more seized up, it gets tighter and tighter around the rotator cuff. It gets a little more pull. So you might hold on to that right leg instead of pushing with the arm. Okay, and then feel yourself just simply turn. It's only inches, right? That you really feel that is a matter of the movement. It's not a lot of movement through the spine, but last time we had the ribs kind of go side to side for a little while before we twisted. So this time, just get a feeling of this hand to the right leg. Feel the whole rotation from the base of the spine, right? You feel that turn in the thoracic back, forward, and then we come out of this twist. We're going to bring the right foot, slide it forward in front of the knee. If you're on the block, you're already there. And then you'll place the foot on the ground space though, and then kind of loosen up your seated cross-legged pattern. So you're not going to be as tensified into the hips. You're going to let the knees kind of wobble open a bit, and then have that sand on the top of the thigh. And I like to use a ball. I'm going to put it under my right thigh. Okay. It's kind of minor, right, with its balance, but here we kind of feel how there's width in the hips. And then when we turn to our left, we're going to reach our hands over to that block set. If you didn't get that, get some blocks to the left side. And then get a feel for that touchdown, either the hands or the elbows on the blocks. This might take a little more maneuvering for your breath to get your elbows down, just to stretch the back muscles forward. But it's a little different than kind of hunkering down. You have the movement of the back, reaching, the weight into the elbows, and then your head just simply lowering down. You feel the rib cage expand and settle. Not necessarily contracting, but just feeling that motion alternating. This could be a pretty intense for some of us in our hips. Kind of notate, we've gone from one side, kind of isolated, into the other. So our work is going to be finding a little bit of symmetry coming up with the spine and the front of the hips. Let your head relax. Feel the neck releasing. If it's too much in your shoulders, right? If it's pulling, you can always do the same shape with the blocks in front of you. Right, and maybe your hands are on them and the blocks change their setting. You can always try this version too. Sometimes little things are surprisingly upsetting right in the shoulders. Maybe not for some of us, but feel a few more of these moments with the knees open. Okay, and that's something to kind of meditate on when we drift into the next shape, is the knee shape. So they're moving out from the hip joint here, whether you're to the left or you're in the front with your hands. Okay, so let's come out of this shape, and I want us to actually flow into a Sphinx pose. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll take the hands up to the thighs. You move your sand aside. Okay, everyone's got a belt kind of nearby. I think our belts are probably unbuckled right now. So moving the ball, and then if you've got a stack of blankies behind you, take one of them off to the side. And what you'll work your way towards is like through pigeon. So the right leg is kind of bending, moving to the left side with the right knee. The left leg is, the right leg stretches back, and then you're going to come back to, you kind of have to maneuver your way however you make it. You're going to place your knees back on the blanket. I'm going to shift things around here to get on that blanket correctly on my mat. And then have your bolster under you. And you presume you're going to be on the bolster in moments, but I want you to spread out the fingers besides the bolster, thumbs stretching to the bolster. And then with your toes either relaxed or toes under, choice is yours. Round your back into cat and get the feel of the hands pushing and the spine. How does it stretch this way, right? It's a little interesting with the back maneuvers. So feel when you're arching your back now, coming back forward with the heart. And then feel when you mildly massage into the back, how your abdomen might be kind of pulls in to do that positioning with your spine. Okay, and then find that neutral. Okay, and then I want you to let the hands walk on forward, the hands glide forward, then you're gonna lean down. So I would encourage you to have the bolster so it's on the tops of the thighs, right? And it's not all the way to the knees. So everyone will angle it in that proportion. The tops of the feet rest. Find your way from that up dog and then see if you can use your back muscles versus your hands and wrists to lower down. And that could take a few years of doing that, alternating weeks, right, to get the back strengthened that way. But here's a good one. I sometimes like to put my blocks under my elbows. I mean, it may seem like, well, that's a little simple. And then come up to Sphinx Pose this way. So I get a little more of a target strength in my central spine, right behind the heart, little strength. Because for me and my length, when my elbows are on the ground, I just can't get quite higher up into that space. You might be able to. So you choose, but Sphinx Pose for about a minute. Okay, and if the blocks are a little bit creative for you to try, even if you're really limmy, you could always try it and see if that is an interesting engagement in your back. If one side of your back feels a little bit tighter than the other here, this is a good exercise in shoulders back, spine strong. This is like natural cat pose, right? When you observe a cat, like they're a little strengthening for their spine pose. You just kind of stay here for a little while. Okay, now the neck, however, for the human, we're going to let that tilt down. So it's not pulling up like so with the chin jutting. It's tilted down. Shoulders might be getting pretty warm. Okay, now when we come back, what we're going to do is slide the blocks away, hands on ground for all of us, elbows in. Now, visualize how your back would have to adapt to get yourself back to table without all arm work. Right? So get a feel. Does your back have that strength to get your chest up? Okay, and then do your lungs have any capacity? Yeah, they certainly could use some more. So as the hands are open, you're going to push, and then I want you to use your hips to stretch the hips back. So I don't want you to try to push up using all arms. So try it one more time. You're going to lower down through that up dog. Let the spine have its natural arch, so the chin forward, and then try to press down to your knees to bring your hips back. Round your back, chin towards the chest. Really try to get that loop through the spine, or the spine stretch. And then find neutral. And now we're going to clear the mat. So you're going to move your bolster aside. Okay. And what you'll do is you'll take a lift of your knee. So as you stretch back into that downward dog, depending on how your arms move into this position, if it's not going to feel okay for your wrist, you're going to lower to your elbows. But if you do this adaptation, right, with the hips up, your knees up, your head's going to likely get close to the ground. So your work is going to be to walk your feet in a little closer, right? For those of us on our elbows. Hands, your work is on trying to keep the back of the arm, right? To keep it toned so it doesn't drop down. This is a typical correction, is the back of the arm kind of hooks down and bends too much. So we're trying to keep that lift in our back. Okay, so take the few moments here in downward dog. For some of us, our elbows are down. Some of us, our hands are down. And experience that total firmness through the legs. Breathing. Okay. Now I want us to get a feeling of maneuvering the body without necessarily really pushing through our wrists here. So we're going to walk on back. If you're on the elbows, you're going to work your way back as well to the feet. So you're standing on those two, and as the knees are bending, okay, let the spine soak up that circulation, let your head release. You can hold your elbows, and you might have other creative ideas, right? Maybe you're going to hold the back of your legs. Maybe you're going to scratch your head. There's a couple things that might be interesting. Maybe you're going to pull your toes. But the key is to have your head downwards, and the spine feels almost less resistance, right, than the legs. I don't know what you feel about your spine and your legs here, but these classes may as well be a little bit of investigation. Okay, so if I feel this kind of huddled position, you can feel your knees in a bend. Really work with the bottoms of the feet, stretching. Even if your feet have no issues, might as well get them well stretched out. Okay. All right, so with the spine long, notice the leg reaction. Okay, now if your head is kind of holding up, mine is, it's pulling a little bit. I want you to get a belt. Okay, if you need to kind of take a field trip to get a belt, take a field trip. But then feel where your knees are stretching through the back of the legs, right? How your feet push, how your hips lift up behind you, how your spine dangles. Okay. Now, we're going into our standing shapes without pressure on our wrists. So what you're going to do is round, and you just hold your belt when you come up. You'll see most of me, but not all. And then you're going to turn to your left. So we'll all have our right foot kind of towards what you think is the front of your mat. So you have a wide stance. And take a hold of that belt. Now the knees also have this tendency of pivoting in because the toes are not turned out as much as in. So I want you to feel how your feet are in that parallel pattern, but not turning out. And then take a belt and bring it behind you. So you're holding onto your belt with both hands. Okay, so hands are behind, but the palms are facing forward. So I'm standing wide, but you've got your hold on your belt, palms are forward. Okay. And then this way the wrists are involved with pressure down. So as I fold forward at the hinge of my hips, I've got this wide stance. Feet, if they tend to turn out, you got to try to pivot the toes in. And then let the head lower down and feel the arms reaching over your back towards the floor. If this is not appropriate for your shoulders, then don't do it. You can pass on the pose and instead bring your hands to the sides of your lower legs and elbows span out. So this is option 2 for anybody, right? If you don't want to hold your belt, don't hold your belt, no problem. Another way to get around holding the belt would be to buckle up the belt so you have a wide loop and your hands are in that instead of gripping. So take that hold of the belt or the connection and let the spine go further down. Okay. Now let go of any belt that you happen to have. And when the hands are down on the ground now, I want you to try to get them down. So if it's difficult to have hands down, use some blocks underneath. If you've got your blanket kind of in your way, bring it in the middle so your hands could be on each side of the blanket. And bend your knees so it feels like you're moving into a little bit of a squat or a pretty wide squat. Walk your hands to the right foot and turn that foot forward and then get some blocks. And I would have them at least the center setting and then turn that back foot so the heel is lifted. Okay, try to work your weight. Maybe your belt is in the way. Work your weight so your back leg is holding some of that weight up out of your wrists. That takes a bit of understanding, I think, with the leg muscles. So that would mean my legs are in a, they're not on the same track. Each leg has its own track. They're not completely a closed track. So have each track, and as you're feeling that lunge, okay, You might work a bit with this of pushing into your right foot, and that makes your back round. Yep, and nothing wrong if you decide to bring your hands both on the top of that right thigh. So if you decide I'm going to get out of this whole wrist game, and you have to really bear into that right heel, strengthen up into the right hip, and then hands onto the thigh. Now, if your shoulders dump forward, stay with this strength in this right thigh. So you can kind of tap on your right thigh and you kind of know this higher lunge is a workout. The back front hip is open. Okay. So lower down, but not all the way to the ground yet. Feel the leg on the front side, the front leg straighten, the right leg straightens. Okay, and then it bends. And then it straightens. So you just kind of go alternating. Forward, move through the ribs, through the head, forward. Exhale, head lowers down, toes up on the right foot, stretch through the foot. Come back, forward. Lunge, so the knee is just above the ankle. And then exhale, the right foot toes come up. Back heel is trying to get down all the way. Now we'll just take a switch. You're going to step through that right foot, left foot besides the right. So you're in a standing Uttanasana. Take it so it's a short time in the standing forward bend. Just feel the ribs lower down. And then once that right foot steps back, feel if this gives you momentum to come up, then I would take it, right? So you have that anchoring of the back ball of the foot. Some of you might decide you're going to take your blocks up a little higher and stay here with your lunge, right? With the hands down versus up on the thigh. So finding what might be interesting for your muscular balance. Right, hands on the thigh or hands on the blocks. If you come up and it's a little shaky, see if you can find the step of the feet. So maybe the back foot has to step a little bit out to the right behind your hip. Heel is still up. And so that strengthening thread of the ankle right into the heel bone, you can really feel the musculature in the calf bouncing. Okay, so there's a natural deep curve in our spine here. Okay, so as you lower down, hands on blocks, unless it's on a chair or something else, you get a feel for that lunge, and then you'll get a feel to stretch back to that right heel downwards. And this time we'll go back into that left foot. So if you can't see that the toes are up on that left foot, toes are us, toes up. And then find that lunge through that left knee. Inhale and exhale. Yeah, relax your attempt to be really stoic on this one. Just let your body kind of swing with the movement. Maybe you have some music on or something. Okay. So feel how you alternate the rhythm of the leg, knee, and then it kind of swings back. So give it a couple more moments. Knee forward just above the ankle. And then that leg reaches back, toes up. You know, as you come back to that left foot, this time the back knee comes down. So if you've got a blanket, you might guide it so it's right below for landing knee. And then we'll take a moment here when we set that left foot back, left knee back. And then as your hands are on those blocks, you're going to turn your blocks to the lowest height they're at. So you can actually put almost a hand on that. Round your back, chin to chest. And then gently arch the spine. Okay. So hips tilt back, almost to child's pose. Now some of you are child pose content with child pose. So I'm just going to give this as an option. You can kind of lean back. Those of you that are more comfortable with a dog pose before you come to the wall, you might take a dog pose depending on the knees. And those of you that want to stretch back to child's pose, the toes touch, the knees apart, you'll reach back and hands come down. Hands are under your forehead. So dog pose or child's pose. I mean, they're in the same family, right? Adho Mukha Shavasana, right? It's dog pose. Adho Mukha Virasana is child's pose. So same family. One is down and one is up. Okay. Okay, now once you've established that back space symmetrically, right? So this even gives some symmetry to my back in child's pose. Okay, now if you're in dog pose, come back down. If you're in child's pose, we're going to move ourselves all towards table. And then I want you to bring yourself to a wall space. So depending on where you need to maneuver your screen to see, you want to take a wall space so that you have these items. You want to have a couple blocks. Well, I think if you've got a ball, to bring a ball, and you really don't, well, you only need one block to do this really. So you're going to need a block, a ball maybe, bolster, sandbag, yeah, sure. And then the key is going to be on your back and to bring your feet up the wall. Now, not the legs up, just the feet. So I've got my spine in what seems like a flat category. So give yourself some time. This will be slow. So if it takes you a minute or two continuing from this moment to get assembled, that's fine. But you're going to have this support where you have your back, your hands on the front of your hips. You know, when we do cat-cow, it's like you can't really do cat-cow on your hands and knees with your hands on your hips. It just you fall down. So here you can, right? You can have your hands on your hips, so they're kind of guided right at that slot at the top of the thigh, and there's a pelvis, and there's some hips directionally on the side. So feel your head on a blanket. I want you to have a blanket for this one. So you feel the arch of the spine, so the tailbone presses down. Then you'll feel the spine lengthen, like it really presses into the ground. Now, when you feel that length of the spine, a little bit of a tilt for the hips. Okay, now add a block between the knees. Now, if the knees are kind of open for you to do that cat-cow more than a block's width, like in the most narrow setting, maybe you do this with the block in the second setting, middle. Okay, so I want you to do this where it's honest for your hips. So for me, this block narrow, I can't do that tilt at all. I can't get any pushing, any alternating like cat-cow motion where you're working with the nutation of the spine. I have to have my block a little bit, just that second width. Okay, so you choose. You want to make it so that the back muscles can move. And then you keep your blanket and the hands are down besides the hips. And as you lift up your hips, now you're going to feel that slow movement of the pelvis. So it's pretty separated from your waistband. Lifting feels kind of like you got this droopiness down to the base, right? Droopy. And then you're going to let the hips lift up. And you'll feel that you're standing on your shoulders. Okay? It's a shoulder stand version, right, of bridge pose. They're sister poses anyway. Okay, now as you lower your spine down, you get to go as high as you want through the back. Now this next time you can either keep your blanket under your head or lose it. And you're going to lift up, but you're going to bring your arms overhead. Now you might be confused if you're doing cat-cow now or not, but you're lifting your hips up to tilt the hips up and be very careful with your neck here. If you feel like this is overstretching your neck, you can slide the blanket out. Hopefully your surface isn't too firm, but as much as this is, you can also take your blanket so it's just a little flatter than it was before. That's pretty good for me. It's still soft, but not lifting my neck. Now that your hips are tired, lower your spine, take that block, and now you're going to place it under your sacrum, the block. So lift the hips up, and you can put the block at the medium or the high height, okay? Now you kind of hook that sacrum to get underneath, the block to get underneath that space. That you remember the beginning of class, we had the block there too. It's not much different at the end here. So when you lower down your feet, down to the floor. The toes stretch up a little bit at the wall. And for some of us, the block can be the middle height and some the higher height. Okay? So if you have the block really high and you find, oh, I'm getting there, I really feel like that's something I want to get to, but I'm not quite satisfied, it's just a little pressure. What you might work with is this rib cage expansion and the shoulders down and under. This is why you don't want your blanket too bulky, right? You want to be sure you can work with the spaciousness. Everything matters. You need space everywhere. The neck, the ribs, the side carriage, okay? If you can't stand your feet trying to go to the floor, you're kind of worried about that, then you can step your feet back up on the wall. It's kind of great. You could just kind of go between the two worlds for a while. Now, those of us that can get our hands together, you can interlace your fingers and let the shoulders move back and down. It's surprising what things you can do, right, with the block high, with your hands together. And again, you don't need to find the hands connecting, but it might be interesting for your shoulders. Okay, across the shoulders, the clavicle, that sternum, right, that shape moves with the breath. Above the ribs. Okay, now those of us that have the feet on the wall, no problem. You can stay with that. I like the feet on the ground for the reason that it kind of gently stretches my hip flexors. Right, so it has a little bit of openness. And I don't try to walk my feet towards my hands or towards my back. I do want to keep the feet at the wall, at the base. Right, that would just kind of pull my spine chain. Okay, so give it a few more moments. This is one that you could be in for a while, but some of you might find, well, it's not a spine supportive pose for a long time. So bring the feet back up to the wall if so. Now relax any clasp of your hands. Find the neck long. Try to get some space at the neck. And the shoulders try to stay back. Now feel the dependency on your breath here to be even mildly amused. So how you might find your way shifting this pose could be on an out breath, or maybe you like in breath to get yourself somewhere. Most of us, that's a struggle to do, right? That creates struggle. So even if it seems kind of like that's just how you do things, you breathe in as you attempt in your daily habits, this would be a good time to just try it this time. Exhaling, pushing, get your feet up the wall, and then slide the block out. And take some care to lower the spine down slow. Maybe you took another inhale and you made time for the exhale and you feel the spine. And I like to push into the wall real firm. It's like the wall is the massager here for my back, because that density of my feet pushing, and then it feeds up through my spine. Some of these things are kind of amazing what you technically can do to massage between your vertebrae, and you can monitor that pace, the pressure, and how much you do. So if I come all the way down and my head feels a little funny, it's because my blanket's, too low now for the shape. So you might make your blanket back up a little bit so it goes a little bulkier. And now take just a moment before we take our hip crossover just to feel the feet up, knowing we'll do at least one more with the legs fully up in a few. So feel the tilt of the pelvis, feel the natural arch, and then as you lower your feet down, you'll probably need to scoot a little bit away from the wall so you can let your legs be straight. And then we'll take a bolster. If you need to kind of move things around to get your ball, your bolster, your sand, put it on the right side. Or if you can't stand that side right now, you can always do the other. But I'll have my bolster on the right. And then as my right leg straightens out, especially with my foot at the wall base. It feels great for my spine. I'm going to bring the left leg and cross it over to the bolster, but turn so I'm on this little toe side of my right foot. I can get a little closer to the wall now. I can kind of push down to get that little toe side. So I'm on the side of my foot. Now add your ball to the sacrum, and then take a sandbag. If you prefer no sand, no problem. You choose. And maybe you don't like your sand on your hip. Maybe you like it closer to the knee, so it really feels like it's on your thigh. And your lower leg might start bending with the direction of the top leg bending. Don't be surprised if your right thigh has now molded with this top thigh's idea of bending, because the hip joint is corralling over to the right. It's veering. Left arm is open. This is probably the most important part of the pose, is this arm part, because oftentimes, I'll see this kind of rolling shoulders to the right. And so this would be a good opportunity for you to spread out that left arm and feel where that spread is in the ribs. Feel where the hand on that left side is relaxed. The right hand could probably help out your left leg a little bit with the sand placement, or relaxing your right hand on your torso, breathing. And just feel the opportunity of movement cycles with the breath. And your head could roll to the left or stay right in the center. Just nurturing that core cylinder. Alternating the in and out breath. You might sometimes work with the breath through the nose and even out that channel, strengthening the lungs. But do what's comfortable for you, nothing that feels overly challenging to your heart or your state of mind. Feeling that necessary circulation as your head centers back. And scan how far across that left leg was able to reach, noticing that you want to have some similarities on the second side. So before you venture over, and take a moment just to kind of feel, how does your bottom leg bend? Is it a lot of a bend? And so you have kind of an image in your mind of per side. Okay, and then move the sand. And anytime you might just kind of close your eyes and sense, okay, this is how much I rotated over. And then when you prepare to go that second side, you might do some windshield wiper knees. And you might also decide, no, I'm good with knees to chest. That feels like the right move for the moment. So take a motion, what feels the respectful place for your back. And then bring the bolster to the left side. And just keep in mind in these final couple poses that you want to find that you're creating some evenness. So when I take the left foot straight down and I turn the right leg over the bolster now on the other side, there might be some little differences that you notice in your attempt to align the second side out. So the places, again, that you can find some pretty even balance, I think, for most of us, after you get your sand on your right thigh, is likely going to be your attempt at using the props even, right? So your bolster is probably at the same spot next to your hip. You can't jinx that one, right? That one is obvious, but your body's got these inner motions nerve-wise and circulation and hydration that is different one side to the next, even the organs. So There might be some subtle things you'll start to pick up on. The ball could feel like it's pretty much in the same spot, sand, if you use it or not. But then this right arm, when you move that open, you're trying to give some even balance for your shoulders. Okay, and your right arm especially, because it's the cross over position, diagonal, and then your head rolls to the right. Right, left hand could be resting on the body to feel the movement of breath. It's nice to sometimes feel the breath in your hand, just to notice and expand. Just doing the right amount of intensity. Give a few more moments here. Is there any ability you can let your hip kind of relax, that right hip, even if it's sensing some increased circulation? Can you let the weight of the leg relax? And now both sides of the spine have been pulled out from the central channel of the spine. Right, so now when we do begin to get to legs up the wall, see if you can find a attempt to get there where your mindset is just real simple and internal. So it might look different for you to get into it than anyone else. But when you do remove that ball, I would be a little careful that you let your body roll to that side you're at. Right, so if I'm leaning to my right leg is crossing to the left, I'm going to roll to that left side. And then kind of walk the hands back towards the legs and then take my bolster to the wall base, right at the base. And then when you sit with your seat up at I guess it's not all the way up the wall, but it's as close as it can get. You want to find probably your blankie. The blanket could be lengthwise under your spine here. It can also be under your head across. You might find it kind of interesting to change it up sometimes. So my spine has that support. Now, when I get my seat up to the wall, I'm going to roll so my legs basically stick up, right? They swing up, but they do just kind of stick up somewhere. That's more than a swing. But when I rotate and I try my best to get upside down with my legs, take it your time. If you didn't get quite as supported as you were hoping, try it again. Try to get your tush right next to the wall before you swing the legs up so you get that support. And the legs don't have to be entirely sealed to the wall. Okay. Get a sandbag and slide that so it's even on your mid body. Okay. And then maybe you bring it to your feet. If you feel like you just got your legs up and you don't want to jinx anything, you could also leave your sandbag right onto your core or up onto your rib division, right? It really connects right at the ribs. We didn't start with that today. We do that often in the beginning. So if you missed that, you can do that now. Or stand on the feet. Okay. So once you've established the openness of the arms and the balance of arches and the spine, and even the contours that you feel all over yourself, right? The legs have contour. The arms have a little bit of bend and flow. And then letting all that flow come back to the heart. So reversing the effects of gravity on the heart, the lungs, and the brain. Turning yourself upside down. you have any hardware on your face, you might take that off for just a little bit here so that the skin cells of the face can all soften, not trying to fix the gaze into any place of the face. Make sure that your head can nod a little bit side to side. Abdomen is relaxed, right? So you have a soft belly. So the diaphragm is naturally in contention with the abdominal organs, right? It pushes down on the diaphragm the whole time. So the diaphragm has to work against that weight on the inhale. But the wonderful part of the legs up is on the exhale. It speeds up even a small amount, so the exhale is longer than the inhale without trying. Just the muscles, the body's in place for that. Inhale through the nose for 4 to 5 counts. Belly relaxed. Exhale out of the nose or the mouth. 5 to 6 counts. You know, feel where there's that nice kind of scoop of the back, it's lifted. There may be some areas that you can kind of fill in with the breath. Flex the feet so you really refresh your legs. Give a few more moments to revitalize the brain, the face, and the lungs. Now we'll start to move into that Cobbler's pose one last time. We've taken Cobbler in all the directions today, and they've all been kind of minor support, right? No blocks under the knees today for any of them. So as you slide your feet down, you'll bring your knees, maybe they'll kind of bounce off a little bit, your feet from the wall, and the legs move towards the ribs, massaging through the colon, right? The legs are on each side. And then when you move your stand away, be careful if you've got glasses around you. Okay, then move your knees apart, the feet together, and hands on the thighs so you're pressed towards the wall, inner thighs. Okay, this is a nice way to do this shape because you can massage through the adductors, the inner thighs. You can kind of palpate with the heel of the hand in that structural region. Even if you're pretty flexible, this area can be boggy because there's so many lymph nodes here. So it's nice to massage that area. Just kind of palpate back and forth, upside down. You get a benefit to be inverted at the same time. This would be a good pairing of poses, right? Legs at the wall and then Cobbler's pose for a minute or so. Okay, and let's come together, finishing the session of experiencing as the knees move to the chest. You're going to roll and take some care if you've got the blanket under your spine because it makes it a little bit tougher to get around. When you come up, take a moment where we feel our sitting space and we monitor how the legs may feel they've been upside down. This might be like, oh, a pretty good leg feeling sometimes when they've been inverted. And then you come to this shape, feels a little easier on my knees. So not having to tighten the knees up, but just bring the hands up and balance the palms together. Feel how they actually touch and the hands nestle the thumbs towards the heart, upper or lower. All right, so take a moment where we feel the support of practice, breathing in the awareness from others, and simply some shared teaching today. Inhaling and exhaling, bowing into